Hi everybody, hope your day has been wonderful so far. We're going to talk about quantum numbers. So quantum numbers are basically the address of an electron. Remember, we've been talking about electron configurations. Electron configurations are kind of like the address for the entire set of electrons in an atom. So if I'm talking about magnesium, for example, and I do the electron configuration, I tell where each of the 12 electrons are, how they're distributed among the energy levels, the sublevels, the orbitals, and what spins they have in magnesium. So all 12 electrons, right? But if I give the quantum numbers for an electron in magnesium, then I'm giving the address for just one electron. So that's the difference here. Electron configurations are for all the electrons in an atom. Quantum numbers are for only one electron. And so each electron has a unique set of quantum numbers. There are 4 quantum numbers, and the symbols for those are N, L, M, and S, and each electron has a unique set of 4 quantum numbers. It's like its address. So the first quantum number is called the principal quantum number, which is really the energy level, N. So we know that, right? So, you know, the energy levels go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and so on. So those are pretty easy. So if I have, let's say, an electron, let's say that it is in the 3D and that it is right here. Okay, and I want the address for that electron, that one arrow. So the first of the quantum numbers would be the energy level, and so the first one would be a 3 for the third energy level. Next is the sublevel, and that gets the symbol lowercase l. And the sublevel, remember, they get letters, S, B, D, F. Theoretically, there's more, G, H, and so on, but S, B, D, and F are the ones that we use so far based on the elements we've discovered. And remember, we said S is the lowest in energy, then P, then D, then F. So they are letters, and for quantum numbers, obviously we need numbers as opposed to letters. And so the S sublevel is assigned the number 0. The B sublevel is 1. The D sublevel is 2. The F sublevel is 3, and so on. So they go 1, 2, 3, but they start with 0 as opposed to starting with 1. The reason, this is just a side note, the reason why there are these numbers is this is the number of nodes that are in these sublevels when we graph them. So the S looks like a sphere. It has no nodes. If you've studied in math, nodes are where your function is equal to 0. And so nowhere in a sphere can you find a node where it's equal to 0. The P sublevel looks like a dumbbell. And so right here, you can draw a linear node. And so it only has one node. And so that's where the 1 comes from. The D looks like a 4-leaf clover. And so there's a node and there's another node. So it has 2 nodes, therefore the 2. The F looks kind of like a flower. There's 6 of them. Kind of like this. You know, I can't draw very well, but you can kind of tell the picture here. So there's 1, 2, 3 nodes, and so on. So that's where it comes from. You don't need to remember that. Just wanted to give you a visual to see why they're given those numbers or assigned those numbers. So back to my electron that I wanted to get the quantum numbers for here. We said it's in the third energy level. Then we described its sublevel. It's a D, and D corresponds to 2. So my second quantum number would be 2. Okay, next is the orbital. So you know that within energy levels there are sublevels. Within sublevels we have orbitals. You know that S has 1 orbital, P has 3, D has 5, and F has 7. And the way they get a number is you treat them as if these orbitals are a number line. So there's your S, just has 1. There's the P, has 3. D has 5, and F has 7. This is S, P, D, and F. So what you do is the middle orbital gets a 0. And this goes 1, 2, 3, -1, -2, -3, just like a number line. So for the D's, this would be 0, 1, and 2. This would be -1, -2. For the P's, there's your 0, 1, and -1. And for the S, the only possibility is a 0. So let's go back to our electron that we were trying to find the address for, which is right here, and let's come up with the orbital. So this would be 0, this would be 1 and 2, -1, -2. And so my electron there is on the orbital number -1. And so that's its third quantum number. And the orbital gets M as the symbol for it. Sometimes you'll see it as M sub L, depending on which textbook you use. And then the last quantum number for an electron to describe its address, where it is the spin. Remember that we said if you have an orbital, it takes 2 electrons, and we show that by showing 1 up arrow, 1 down arrow, because they're spinning in opposite directions. So if we choose to draw it as an up arrow, we say that the spin is +1/2. If we draw a down arrow, we say the spin is -1/2. And so back to my electron that I wanted the address for, this one is looking up, so that would be +1/2. And so this is the set of quantum numbers that describe that specific electron right here. It's the address for that electron. So let's practice. If you go to the next page, we want to give the quantum numbers for each of these electrons. So remember, the quantum numbers are N, L, M, and S. We usually put them in parentheses and we put commas in between them. So here's my electron right here. So the first quantum number is the energy level, and so it looks like it's in the second energy level, so that would be a 2. Next is the sublevel. So it's an S. Remember what number corresponds to an S? Let's put them here. So S is 0, P is 1, D is 2, F is 3. So we're on an S, and so that would be 0. The next quantum number is the orbital. And remember, the orbital, we number those as if it's a number line. So the middle one gets a 0, right? And there's only a middle one there, so our only option is 0. And then finally, the spin. This one's looking up, so it'd be +1/2. Let's try the next one right here. So energy level, it's in the 4th energy level. Next, the sublevel. The sublevel is P. What does P correspond to? Corresponds to a 1. Next is the orbital. So we number them like a number line, 0, 1, -1. So that one's on the 0. And then finally the spin, it's looking up. So that's +1/2. Let's look at the next one. So this one right here. So first is the energy level. This is on the 4th energy level. Next is the sublevel. It's an F. And so we said the F corresponds to a 3. Then the orbital. So the middle one gets a 0, 1, 2, 3, -1, -2, -3. So that specific electron is on orbital number 2. And it's looking down, so -1/2. Okay, let's practice a couple more. So this one right here. So 3rd energy level, because it's in the 3D. Next, D corresponds to 2. And then the orbital, so there's the middle of my D, 1, 2, -1, -2. So it's on the 2, and it's looking up, so +1/2. Next one. Let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And there's my 4F. I'm just going to circle it because it's kind of hard to see. So 4th energy level, so 4. F sublevel, so that's a 3. Orbital, you take the middle one, that's 0. 1, 2, 3. -1, -2, -3. So that one's on 1. Looking down, so -½ excuse me. The next one, right here, 5th energy level, so 5. P corresponds to 1. Orbital is -1. And then it's looking down, so -½ Let's do the opposite. So now I'm going to give you quantum numbers, and I want you to draw where that electron is. So let's see how we can do that. So the first quantum number is a 2. What does that tell us? That tells us that it's in the 2nd energy level. So that means that it could be in the 2s or in the 2p, anywhere here, right? Let's look at the next one. That one tells us the sublevel. 0 corresponds to the S sublevel, so that tells us it's on the 2s. Third quantum number tells us 0. That means it's in the middle if it was a number line. In this case, it doesn't really help us because, you know, the 2s only has 1 orbital, so it's still there. And then the last quantum number, the +½ that tells us it's looking up. So it's on this orbital looking up. Let's try the next one. So the next one, 4, what does that tell us? That's the energy level, right? So it could be 4s, 4p, 4d, or 4f. So anywhere there. So then you look at the next one. 3, what does that correspond to? That corresponds to F, 4f, right? 3 sublevel is the F sublevel. So we know it is here. It's not any of those. What's next? This -3. Well, that tells us the orbital. So there's 0, 1, 2, 3, -1, -2, -3. So we know that it's on -3. So right there on this orbital. And then the +½ tells us it's looking up. So it's on here. Last one we're going to practice. 3rd energy level, because the first quantum number is a 3. So that means 3rd energy level. So it could be 3s, 3p, or the 3d. Next is the sublevel. What does 1 correspond to? That corresponds to p. So we know it's in the 3p, one of these. We're narrowing it down. What does the -1 tell us? That tells us the orbital. So there's, oops, I'm so sorry. Go back here. There we go. There's my 0, 1, and -1. So I know that it's on this orbital right here. And the +½ tells me that it's looking up. So there it is.